Welcome to MIMI'S Sketchbook. It's June and peony season was just over for me. All my peonies have bloomed and have now faded, but I had a lot of fun painting peonies and I wanted to share it with you. One thing that I've done is printed out some nice clear pictures of peonies from Pinterest. And peonies can be extremely complicated, and I don't want to spend hours and hours and hours drawing intricate detail of a peony. But what I want to do is to capture the essence of a peony with a few simple strokes. Here's another grouping of peonies, just a simple, more simple, not the real complex ones. These I am going to keep in front of me as references to help me. And I also have a chart here that I've broken down how to paint the peony, what steps I'm going to use. So I'm going to post this on MIMI'ssketchbook.com if you want to print it out. But this is pretty much the pattern that I am going to follow as we go along, and it will help you to see what I'm doing, so it kind of uncomplicates the process. Today I'm going to be working with a good watercolor paper. It's 140-pound Canson watercolor. It's a nice heavy-duty paper. You don't want to use anything cheap. It won't work for you. You need a good, at least 140-pound paper. So this is what I'm going to be using today. So as I get going, also I have my watercolors here, and I'm using my Koi watercolor. It's a 48 Koi 48 watercolor. Before I begin painting the flower is practicing some brush strokes. The petals, we want to create them in pretty much one stroke of the brush. So I have a round, this is a round number 6 paintbrush. You can try different sizes, but this is a pretty good overall size that I like to use. I want to, each of my petals is going to be created in a simple brush stroke. So I want to be able to practice them and be able to paint them when I need them and where I need them without a lot of difficulty. So this takes practice. I am going to just begin practicing creating a brush stroke. Now what I'm doing is, you can hold your paintbrush in different ways, and I am holding it. Do you see how I have it laid in my hand here? And so the brush is pretty horizontal to the paper, and I am laying it down and lifting it up. So I'm touching, I've got the whole brush laying down here, and then when I come to the bottom where I want it to become a little more pointed, I pick it up. So here, down, up. Let's try it again. I have to load my brush. Down, up. Down, up. Okay, the whole thing lays down, up. So I want to practice getting that little curve so it looks like an individual. So this is curving like the letter C, but I also want to be able to curve it in the opposite direction. So I'm going to go the opposite way and pull it towards me. So lay it down and pull it this way. Lay it down horizontally, pull it this way. Do you see how it's, lay it down, pull. So I want to practice being able to create those petals. Every time I'm going to refill my brush, I want to have a nice supply of water, watered down paint. You don't want to go in and have to make this with a bunch of strokes. You want to keep your strokes as pure as possible, as simple as possible. So I have some going in this direction, like this. And now these, they're like parentheses, right? One goes this way, these go this way. And I want to be able to have control over them. I can make some shorter. These might come from the other direction on the flower. Round out that part. It's okay if I don't get these edges. It adds a freshness to the flower. I don't want it totally perfect. I want there to be room for some interest and in these. Okay, so now I also have some petals that are coming from the side, so I want to be able to make some coming from this way. So practice being able to get your flowers, get your petals, making some petals come in from the bottom here. So here I'm going to, see how this is nice and wide? I'm going to bring it up. Turn your hand, try it in a bunch of different directions. Here, I want to be able to create a whatever leaf petal I see, I want to be able to create it. So if it's this one coming from the side, I want to be able to create that look, that direction that it's in. Another thing that we're going to be doing is taking the light petal, and you see how it's dark in here, and just adding a touch of dark like this while it's still wet, so that petal creates the shadow, a shadow in there. Do you see how that creates a shadow? And if I come over here and do this one, well, do you see where the shadow is in here? So I can just touch this, and I can create that depth underneath the petal. So we're going to be working wet on wet. So this is what you want to do ahead of time. You want to take some time and practice your brush, using your brush in many different ways. You might also like to go through your brush supply and try some different brushes. I got out a couple of different brushes and I'll see how they handle. I've got my pictures here and I have them to work as a reference, but I also have this guide and I'll leave this so you can see it. So I'm going to start off making this, and I'm going to put a light pencil mark on here. Now a peony is basically a cup made of petals. The petals are all around it. And there's the center of the flower. And depending on how you're looking at it, you can see it in different directions, how it's turned. So you have to think about how it's constructed, okay? So there's a center axis that goes down and through. It's going to be the stem, come down through here, and the stem is going to go down here. See, this is the stem that comes out. The center axis we don't see, but we know it's there. This one, it's going to come in here, and it's down this way. Here, where the darkness is, it's going to be down in here, come down in here, and come down there. So I'm looking at the side, peeking in a little bit into the inside of my flower. So we want to keep that in mind, the structure of the flower. Got a lot of references and things here for me to look at to help me think about this flower. But in the beginning, I'm going to start with this pattern. So I want to give myself a little guide. So see this line here? I'm going to put a light line here. And I'm going to put the top. I've got the bottom, the opening of the cup, this side, and then the top here, and then the bottom, that would be down here, the bottom of this cup shape. I want to just sort of have a guideline so I can keep the size in mind. And then I would know that my center axis would come down. If I could see it, it would be right about here. And the stem would come out, and this would come up like this. But you don't see that there. So let's get this out of here. So very lightly, I hope you can see it. I don't like to draw, I want it dark enough so you can see what I'm doing, but not so dark that it shows up on the picture. Alrighty, so let's get our paints ready. And what I want to have is 2 batches of paint. A light batch of pink, and then a very intense batch where I can just dip into it and create that shading. So here is my light watered down pink. You're going to have to experiment a little bit to get it the shade you want it. I'll try it on a piece of paper here. Let's see. Yep, it's nice and light. That'll do just fine so that there is contrast. All right, so I'm going to start here. Here's number 1. This is my first step. And I want the tops of my petals to be rounded and coming down to the bottom here to kind of merge down there. So I'm going to start here. I want a rounded top and lift and bring it down. A rounded top, lift and bring it down. Here I'm going to start to straighten it up, curve it in the opposite direction, and this side is just going to be the edge of it to fit in there. I could put another little one like that. Now, it's all wet. I'm going to come over here and touch the dark just at the bottom and let this, just that darkness right at the bottom. See the difference? Okay. Now I'm going to do this again. Come up here, step 2, I'm going to do this upper curve. But I'm not going to touch the tops of these, and you'll see why. So I'm going to start here. With my light paint. And as I come over to the side, I'm turning the petals in a different direction. Okay, now I'm trying not to touch here. I'm going to go over and get the dark pink. And now with the tip of my brush, I'm going to come down here and just fill this in without touching the bottom. So you see how it's dark at the bottom, and you see how we have this contrast up here? So now we've got a nice contrast. So you have the depth going inside of this cup shape. Good. Our third step is some side petals. Now, you see here are some side petals coming out like this. These are petals that have opened up, or some of the first petals to have opened. So I want to put some side petals in. So I'm going to go back to my light paint and load my brush. And I'm going to come up here to the outside of the width of the cup of the flower, and I'm going to not touch right here. I want to leave a white space in here, so I'm going to kind of make this rounded and then pull it under here. Okay, I'm going to take a little dark, and I can touch this to get some shading in there. Just touching right here to get the shading. All right. Rinse out that light and get dark, and then get some light again. So I'm going to come over here, get a nice round edge, and bring it down here. Touched, and it kind of touch here. Create that depth in there. Now this takes, I'm not going to joke around and say it doesn't take any practice. It's real easy. You want to practice the amount of water you have. You need to practice the brush strokes. You need to give it a few tries, but it'll come. Now that we've painted step 3, we're going to move on to step 4 and paint these lower petals. They're very shallow, they're coming towards us, and so we have to paint them so they're foreshortened. And it's a short stroke, narrow stroke, with a lot of change of value. We're going to start our petal with the light paint. See how light this is? And it gets real dark as it goes up. So here I'm going to start here. Come in. I'm going to start here. Bring it in. And I'm going to get some nice dark paint and create this shadow down here. Just going to go right into this paint box and get some real intense color. And just leave it. Let it kind of do its own thing with the color. Okay, I'm going to go now and do some of these little side petals, and I can add them. Now they're not going to be predominant ones. I'm just going to add somewhere I feel there might be a few. Don't overdo it. Just kind of let it go. And if you want, you can add a tiny bit of contrast to it, or you can let them, if they're close to the center, you can do it maybe. But the ones on the outside are actually going to be lighter. But you can, if it's still wet, you can touch it. All right, now we want to come in and add some leaves and stem. So our stem, I've got an indication where it's going to be right here. So I'm going to mix up a green. And I want a light green. And I also want a nice dark green. And for the dark green, I'm going to get some Prussian blue, and add it to the green. It'll make a nice intense. You can mix up different colors. But you want to start off with a nice light color with a lot of water in it. All right, so here I'm going to, I'm not going to see my stem until it comes down here. So I'm going to, just with the tip of my brush, bring it down. Now this is really light, I can see. Maybe a little too light. I'm going to add some more color to it, just so it's and then I'm going to go up and add some of this Prussian blue right here. So it looks like shadow. The shadow coming down. This just isn't wet enough for it to grow on its own. I've got to help it along. There we go. Needs enough water for it to start to move, and it will move on its own. So even if I go like that, it'll start to move down, and it will fade out. Okay, now I'm going to make the leaves, and the peony leaves grow in threes. So I want to get 3 leaves here, either 1, 2, 3, maybe would be good. So I'm going to start with the center vein. I'll bring it down, and then I'll come on one side, press down and lift, and the other side press down and lift. And then I'm going to right away go up and get the dark and touch it here, and it should start to grow for me. Go over it again, a little bit more. again. It should take off on its own. Okay, let's do another one. So I'm going to put a center line here, down and up. You started with the point and then press down and up. Let's make sure this is wet enough. Okay, I'm going to grab some of that Prussian blue, put it in here, and it should create that shadow. Rinse my brush out and let's do it again for a third one. There's the center vein. And start here down and up. Press down and lift. And I can give it a little tip and it will work a little faster. See how it just runs right up there. And I don't want to manipulate this too much. I want it to just kind of naturally have these colors flow into each other, so it becomes as clean, as unworked as possible. Now I can still see my lines on here, which I don't care to have, but I drew those so you could see them. And but in another one I definitely wouldn't do it. So now I can draw, perhaps put in a bud. And a bud you might want to practice too, but a bud could be just around, leave part of it white, get your dark paint and just touch it so it has a little bit of roundness to it. And then we need a stem, so it would sort of be an offshoot of here, and I'm just going to suggest it there. Touch it with the Prussian blue, and it'll grow. And give it a couple little petals, small, close ones that are just opening. Touch them with a little paint. That touched the, I touched the, but that's okay. Creates interest. I like some, happy mistakes sometimes. So we can do that. And we could put another flower up over here, maybe a little bit smaller one that's opened. We could continue this here and put another one down here. Why don't we do this? So I'm going to put another flower in here, following the chart. I hope I still got this all on. This time I'm going to visualize this instead of drawing it in, so I don't have the sketch underneath, because this is really hard to, just won't erase very well. So I'm going to continue that stem down here and make this a little smaller flower. I'm going to work a little smaller. So I'm going to do step one and have maybe fewer. 1, 2, 3. Create the bottom curve. Okay. And get my dark touched in here and just let it grow on its own. Come back up here. And I'm going to do my 1, 2, 3, my top curve. So I'm going to come down. I'm not going to touch, remember? I'm not going to touch. Oh boy, I'm close. I'm going to have to be careful here. But that's the excitement. Ooh, it touched. It's okay. see what happens. It's exciting. Okay, I'm going to come over to 3 and do some side leaves. I'm going to come down, come in on this side, come up here and leave a little white space so I can see it. Come in. Now get some dark here, dark here. Just kind of let it grow, let the shading grow. Now come down here to the 4th step, and I'm going to get some of these petals that are in the front, so they're going to be very horizontal. Come across here. Dark in there. Underside of this flower, there's going to be depth in there. And I'm not going to fool with it. I'm just going to let the water move that deep tone around. Just let it just walk away from it. Let the water do its thing. Okay, I'm going to make these just a little darker because this is a smaller flower. Now I'm going to put some of these outside petals in. Show the fullness. Wherever there's a and that's kind of enough. And go back to my green. And imagine where that stem is coming. So it's coming here. I'm going to come down here. And on this, I have to remember I need my shading up here, so I'm going to touch it with that Prussian blue. And this one, I'm going to put some of the sepals, this outer casing here. So let's put these kind of down here, one here, and touch them with from the inside so that it looks like a shadow. And I'm just going to leave it like that. I think that's plenty. I could put a couple of more, as many buds as you wanted. Add more buds. Just decide where you'd like them to be. Okay, now one of the last things we want to do is to show the little filaments and the anthers that are down in here. So we want to wait till this is just almost dry, and I am going to take and just touch in here with the tip of my brush and add some little real intense yellow. And this is just going to be very subtle, showing the little tips of the filaments, and just add that little bit of interest right there in the center of the flower. You want to be careful when you do this, and if you get it when it's a little bit wet, it will kind of push it away, but you have to time it just right. But this will work out fine too. So have fun painting your peony, and remember, it's going to require some practice on your part. So don't give up. Get a lot of paper and paint the fronts, paint the backs, and just keep trying. So thanks for joining me at MIMI'S Sketchbook.